South Africa is today before the International Court of Justice seeking new provisional orders to halt a full-scale offensive in Rafah. This is in the south of the Gaza Strip, saying Palestinians face annihilation. For more on today's hearings, we're joined by SABC News correspondent Alex Cadier. Alex, South Africa's ambassador to the Netherlands, Vusumuzi Madonsela, opened for South Africa, stating that Israel's genocide has continued apace and reached staggering proportions. Just talk us through Team South Africa's arguments before the court today.
Well, certainly the objective from South Africa today was to prove specifically that the Rafah operation led by the Israeli Defense Forces is something that could be in breach of the Genocide Convention. That is the legal objective here, convincing the court to order Israel to stop its operations in Rafah. That is clearly the message from the South African team, laying out what they saw as evidence to that effect, that actually the Rafah operation, according to the South African legal team, is the final stage of the elimination of Gaza and the elimination of the people of Gaza as well. Now, that is the case put forward by South Africa, and it was a very emotional, very difficult testimony by that legal team. One of the lawyers for the South African team crying during that testimony because of the difficulty and the horrors that are being discussed in that courtroom behind me at the moment. So certainly that is a very intense situation. That is the objective from the South African legal team, to prove that in fact the Rafah operation has to be ordered to stop by the International Court of Justice. That is what is on the line at the moment. We also know that statements from Israeli ministers, including Bezalel Smotrich, were read out to the court. Minister Smotrich calling for, or talking about, the total and final elimination of Gaza, and also videos of IDF soldiers chanting, "Let's go destroy Gaza." All of that evidence trying to support South Africa's case that the Rafah operation could be in breach of the Genocide Convention and that the court should order Israel to stop.
Now, Alex, we do understand that there will be a briefing shortly by Team South Africa, as per norm, as we've seen before when they're at The Hague. But in arguing genocidal intent, you've just touched on there that Israel's finance minister, who's also a member of the Security Cabinet, stated, among others, that total annihilation is important. There are no half measures here. We're negotiating with the ones who should have never existed. Just talk us through more of what Nqayi Tobi put forward in arguing for genocidal intent.
Well, certainly it's about that Rafah operation, because it's not just about those statements or those individual videos from soldiers. It's also about the conditions in which that will leave the civilians in Gaza. The big question looming over the argument is, where will civilians go during the Rafah operation? Is there somewhere for them to be safe? If the answer to that question is no, then there is a possibility that there is genocidal intent or consequences to this operation. That is the kind of fog of war the court will need to cut through. We also know that we'll have that statement, as you said just a few moments ago. I'll have a look at the steps of the International Court of Justice to see if that statement from the South African team will happen soon, but certainly we can expect them to lay out exactly what they tried to communicate to the court today. Tomorrow we'll hear Israel's defense.
Now, when you say or ask, or rather remind us of the question that was asked around where will they go, I remember one particular advocate stating that here what we're seeing with the evacuation orders is really some sort of a cosmetic exercise on the part of Israel, where you had orders of them saying you need Palestinians to evacuate to Rafah or the south because they were bombarding the north. But now they've come to the very south, and as you say, this is what Israel continues to say, that this was the end game, that in Rafah is where it all ends.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's the point that the South African team was trying to make. And I can actually see them coming out now to make that statement. Clearly, they will reiterate that. They will repeat what they said in front of the court. I'll hand back just to you now so we can listen to that statement from the South African team in the next few moments.
All right, let's listen in. It seems the ambassador, Mr. Vusumuzi, is already speaking in. Let's listen in.
But I'm accompanied by the Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Zain Dango, and Mr. Omar Hijazi from the Palestinian Authority. I'm going to give Mr. Dango the first opportunity to speak with you. After that, I'll give Mr. Hijazi to do the same, and after that you will then have the opportunity to ask them a few questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Busi. So I won't be long. I think it's important just to spell out why we came here. This is now the third time that we've come and asking for provisional orders. And we're asking for provisional orders because the situation in the whole of Gaza, but in particular in Rafah, has changed drastically since the last time we came to the court. What we're seeing is the genocidal acts intensifying. We're seeing the killings intensifying, and our legal teams have demonstrated the facts on these changing circumstances, including the genocidal acts in both Rafah and in Gaza. The legal teams specifically pointed out to the unabated killing since we came here in January, and they pointed out that at least 13,000 people died since we came in January and asked for these provisional orders. What we're asking for is the court to use its powers to stop this carnage. The court to use its powers in an unambiguous way to stop this. That we do not need the court to provide language that infers what Israel must do, that the court must explicitly state that Israel must stop its genocidal acts in Rafah, that it must stop its genocidal acts in Gaza, and that includes an unambiguous call to cease its military operations in Rafah and the whole of Gaza. The court has previously said that its calls for humanitarian aid to be provided unhindered can only be done if there is a ceasefire in place. What our legal team is pointing out is we should not depend on such a ceasefire to come through a political negotiations because it's not happening, or through some action at the Security Council because it's not happening. We're asking that the court uses its powers that has been conferred upon through the Genocide Convention to order the acts of genocide to end, and that includes an explicit order for the cessation of hostilities to end. We're also asking the court to ensure that it orders Israel to respect all of its previous provisional orders, including the very many orders regarding the unhindered access to humanitarian aid. So in essence, we've argued that all the conditions, the legal conditions, prevail for justifying our call for new provisional orders, because not only have the conditions changed, they've changed rapidly, and they've deteriorated much more rapidly since the last court described the situation as perilous. So we hope that the court will come and give us, will sit and give us the orders we ask for rather rapidly, because it is urgent.
Thank you, Mr. Omar. We now give the opportunity to Mr. Chazi.
Allow me first to express our eternal gratitude to South Africa for taking the moral, legal and political stance to come forward and defend the humanity and defend the Palestinian people in the darkest chapter of their history and their Nakba. This ongoing Nakba that has been perpetuated for the last 76 years is now witnessing a new heights, which is very dangerous and threats the existence and the continuation of the Palestinian people on their land. Today, I think South Africa made it clear that the court needs to assert its authority in relation to the genocidal acts and the complete and utter disrespect and contempt that Israel is showing towards the orders that the court has issued, but furthermore to the whole international system that stands on laws and international system that is based on legal order. Today, South Africa, with this action, is defending this order, is protecting this order in the face of countries that are turning their back to this order and trying to play in semantics in order to absolve Israel of its responsibility. We believe that what South Africa is asking is the bare minimum of what is required of humanity today to end this carnage and this genocide that is taking place in Palestine against defenseless civilians, children, women and elderly who have done nothing to face this utter disregard to their lives, except that they are living in Gaza and that they are Palestinians. This also extends furthermore to the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory. And for that, again, we reiterate that we are eternally gratitude to South Africa for its stance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You now have the opportunity to ask questions. Let us please be orderly so that everybody gets a chance to ask their question and hopefully be responded to adequately. You raise your hand, I pointed you, please introduce the media house you come from and then pose your questions. Can we limit the number of questions to 2 at this stage per speaker? I'll start with you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Are you together?
No, you are not.
Okay.
So Anadolu News Agency, Salman Aksunger. So the question is, in the previous orders, the court also ordered the Israeli government to provide reports, and those reports were not able to your access. So this time you are asking for explicit access. Will you be able to any kind of have an access, or like someone who see the report that how Israel is explaining his actions towards providing this humanitarian assistance or giving and enforcing these orders that are given by the court in its previous reports? Will you be able to any kind of have any access or any kind of like getting imply from these reports of Israel submitted to the court?
So in terms of the reports that Israel was required to submit with regards to the last provisional orders, they have put in a report. We are responding to that report, and in fact today was the deadline for us to submit. We have submitted today. So we hope that based on that, the court will use some of that reports also to adjudicate in terms of our new asks. In terms of our new provisional orders, Israel has not responded to the provisional orders that were under discussion today. So we will wait to hear what they do present tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Sir.
Thank you. From Faro in Central America. I'm trying to understand the rationale of what you're requiring today. You were very clear on your position, saying that Israel is incompetent and is not obeying the court's previous provisional measures. So if you believe that Israel will not obey any provisional measures, what's the point of asking for more? How do you think this changes the situation?
What we believe is that Israel is doing what it is doing because of decades of institutionalized impunity. Decades of Israel not responding or respecting UN Security Council resolutions that are binding, and we've seen over the last 7 months ignoring the binding orders of this court. What we're saying is, and as my colleague Mr. Hijazi has pointed out, we believe that this court should play the role that it was set up to play to ensure that Israel does comply. We also hope that countermeasures will now become a reality in other institutions of the United Nations system. This is the apex court, but we also have other institutions in the UN system that can compel Israel to meet its obligations. And we hope that these kinds of countermeasures will be swift and explicit. And this time we're asking for the provisional measures that the court orders to be explicit, not implicit. Not for people to infer that the court is saying there must be a ceasefire if this is to be happening. We're saying that the cessation of hostilities must happen. And as one of our lawyers pointed out in the pleadings today, the court has the powers to do that, and under the Genocide Conventions, it does not have to require all parties to be state parties for a ceasefire to be ordered. That a state involved in what has been already declared plausible genocide can be ordered to cease those activities. We are hoping that this court does this and that Israel does comply, because we are keen that the institutions of global governance, and particularly this apex court, is respected for global governance and the court to become the epitome of global justice that we all hope it can be.
Thank you. Ma'am.
How much faith do you still have in international justice if only after 4 months the situation has gotten worse? And how important is it that Egypt is now supporting your case?
Let me start with, I don't know if Omar, you want to go first? Okay. Look, I think, let me start with your last question first step. I think that Egypt joining is important, that you have a major power in the region joining our case is a signal that this institutionalized impunity is coming to an end, at least at the political level, and that Egypt is joining us in a legal action is equally important, because it's also profiling the fact that we are trying to use the institutions of global governance to effect what we've always wanted to do, effect firstly a peace in the short term, but also a long and lasting peace through ending the occupation, through negotiations. But for all of that to happen, the settler colonial activities and the genocidal actions that accompany that must end. And we are hoping that the institutions of global governance will this time be more explicit, and that all the countries that are currently supporting Israel, both explicitly or through non-action, will now act with a lot more vigor to ensure that their ally stops this genocidal action.
Yeah. If you allow me to add also that we have faith in humanity. And humanity has produced these norms in order to avoid going back to the crimes that were committed previously. And today humanity is showing its true face in relation to Palestine, with students taking in the universities, with the journalists who are paying their lives today in order to cover what's happening in Gaza, with the doctors who are being buried, with those who they are defending. Humanity is also standing up for Palestine. It is certain governments that have decided and took the position of defending Israel. And this is a thin line that they are working in. And we should not allow them or give them the space to continue walking in. This is why we need to clarify these orders and leave no room for anyone to interpret it the way they want to interpret it, and to expose those media outlets and everyone who tries to obscure or to hide the crimes that Israel is committing. This is what we have faith in, and this is what we will continue to fight for, and we hope that we will prevail at the end, not only for the sake of Palestine, but for the sake of each and everyone who lives on earth. Because if we leave what Israel is doing today to the Palestinian people to pass without any accountability, it will come to haunt each and everyone living on this earth.
Thank you very much.
Well,
I'll give you
our hands for the
All right, that's South Africa's media briefing at The Hague, seeking new provisional and explicit measures to halt the offensive in Rafah and generally the broader Gaza Strip. Well, our correspondent Alex Cadier is still with us. Alex, so tomorrow Israel will respond.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it will be in stark contrast to what we just heard. Of course, the South African delegation making it clear that as this war progresses, as this war evolves, so too must this case. That was the clear message by that delegation, saying that the situation on the ground in Rafah and Gaza has gotten worse much faster. It has not gotten better as a result of previous provisional orders ordered by the International Court of Justice behind me. Now, we have a statement from an Israeli government spokesperson saying that South Africa continues to act as the legal arm of Hamas in an attempt to undermine Israel's right and obligation to defend itself, and they call this case a deliberate, another attempt to cynically exploit the International Court of Justice in The Hague. So clearly, very strong, very critical response from Israel. You can expect more of that here in The Hague in the next 24 hours.
All right, Alex, thank you very much for that reportage. That's SABC correspondent Alex Cadier.